Rough sex is hard to define because it covers such a broad spectrum of stuff from lip biting to BDSM. As a general rule, rough sex refers to sexual activity that includes aggressive behavior in some form or another. You know, there's like a certain amount of pleasurable pain involved, as well as it usually being coupled with more vigorous movement. The desire for rough sex is both normal and common. What constitutes rough sex varies from person to person. One person might think a certain sex act is really rough, whilst another might just be like, yeah, that shit's mild. It's all really relative. Surprisingly or unsurprisingly, it depends where you kind of sit. Many people have BDSM related fantasies or have experimented with some form of BDSM. And that just kind of highlights how prevalent rough sex is. In this video, I'm going to talk about consensual rough sex and only rough sex that is consensual. Due to the nature of the subject, if you are sensitive to certain things, words and descriptions, then now's probably a good time to switch off. Welcome to Share Thoughts. I am Cheryl, and these are my thoughts. When we hear the term rough sex, so many thoughts are conjured up in our minds. Some good, some great, and admittedly, some not so good. This idea of rough sex being a thing is far from a new concept. And once again, we have popular music to thank for glamorizing it to an extent. I grew up listening to a lot of hip hop and rap, as well as R&B, and all of those genres definitely float the idea of rough sex being appealing. In rap, for example, it is definitely presented that rough sex translates to good sex. You know, sex you ain't never gonna forget, memorable sex, hardcore sex, thugged out sex, the kind of sex you need, apparently. Whilst R&B was a little less focused on calling it out as rough sex necessarily, but got more suggestive with it. I'm gonna make you scream. You're gonna scream until, dare I say, the neighbors know my name. All of that shit. So yeah, rough sex has and always will be a thing. So what is it? What are the rules? Are there any rules? Should we all be having rough sex? And how far do we go with it? When does rough sex turn into abusive sex? And how do we have rough sex safely? Imagine if you bring up the subject of rough sex in a room full of adults, you're going to get a whole lot of different understandings, different perspectives, different thoughts, and that's fine. That just reflects reality. Everyone's interpretation of everything is exactly that, down to their own interpretation. It's the same when it comes to rough sex. People often don't like to talk about things like this. Well, I say people often don't like to talk about things like this. You get different kinds of people. You get those that are really up for talking about anything, really open with stuff. And then you'll get those people that are blatantly against it, and that's fine. But the people that bother me the most are the ones that kind of act like they ain't down with it, but low key, they're all about that life. Now, don't get me wrong, discretion is everything. And I don't believe you have to put all your cards on the table. You don't have to be exposing the ting, so to speak. But in my experience, when someone's opposing something a little bit too much, 9 times out of 10, that's what they're on. But anyway, I digress. Society and what we're conditioned to think plays a huge part in how people react and how comfortable they may feel about talking about something like rough sex. Let's be honest. It's quite a divisive kind of subject. I get it. It's almost like if you make it clear that you don't want slow, sensual sex all the time, there's a kind of a sort of underlying implication that you might have something wrong with you. You might have experienced trauma. You might, have issues outside of just being, can I say, relatively stable. You know what I mean? Like there's something going on with you. It's not all linear. I think that's wrong. And I think that's bad. The truth is, not everybody wants slow and sensual sex. It's about allowing people to indulge in whatever the hell it is they like, provided it's consensual and provided it's legal and it's safe. Like, I can't say enough. Who are we to have anything to say? I think at this point, it's important to state that if you're having rough sex and not all parties are consenting, that constitutes sexual assault. Because as with anything sexual or anything to do with sex, consent is paramount. There has to be consent, otherwise it's non-consensual. And if it's non-consensual, then it's a crime. I think when it comes to rough sex, for some, it can provide a deep mental satisfaction. It's like stress relief for some. That would obviously depend where you're at mentally. And that would also depend on what makes you tick. I believe, and I think most people are probably with me on this, there is a definite connection between sexual fulfillment and mental satisfaction. The two kind of go hand in hand. If you have good sex, you feel good. If you had shit sex, then you're just like, what the fuck? There's a connection. I mean, take for example, you've had a really stressful week. For some, all they want is a hard and fast fuck. They want their hair to be pulled. They want their neck to be grappled with. They just want it rough. That sex session could be majorly satisfying. It could be a thing where the tension that they felt prior to having that kind of sex literally just melts away with every pull, every tug, every push, you know? Also, I think a very, very valid point here is love, sex, and pain all have the potential to stimulate and release similar chemicals and hormones in the body. When you are aroused, stress and pain can stimulate the serotonin and melatonin release in the brain. This could ultimately transform what could otherwise be painful experiences into pleasurable ones. Some people may find it difficult to bring up the subject of wanting rough sex. And I would say that more than likely women would struggle with this more than men. And I think, again, that's down to the way society likes to dictate what women should be doing, how they should be doing it, how they like it, how they don't. You know, it's all kind of out there and it's nonsense. However, I personally think, especially if you're in some kind of relationship, whether that's a full-blown you're my man, you're my woman relationship, or if you're just having sex regularly, or whatever it is, it's a relationship of sorts, I think transparency is key. I want to say especially when, but I think just in general, but including when it comes to like the sexual stuff that you want to engage in or try, or just what you like. I think bringing it up can be a bit awkward, especially if it's someone new and they have no idea that this might be something that you like. I personally would think bringing up something like you like rough sex is well worth doing, like maybe after you've had sex. You know, when you're in a comfortable situation, you're both relaxed, you've just done it anyway. You could kind of introduce the idea of maybe, you know what, next time, babes, you might want to, you know, slap my ass a bit or grab my neck or pull my, however it is. I mean, I know that just was not sexy, but you know what I'm trying to say. You might say it in a sexy way, or you might not. You might just be one of those matter-of-fact people that just tell it as it is. You don't really have that kind of sexy way or whatever, but just being able to communicate that. And if you're both up for it, well, the pussy slapping can commence. Jokes aside, it is important to understand that rough sex does require a lot of communication, and that's so everybody knows what page we're on. Constant consent. When you're having rough sex, it's like a constant thing. Is that okay? How do you like that? You know, there's ways of kind of incorporating that into the discourse while you're having sex. I've said it again a billion times before, never ever do anything that you're not comfortable with. So even if you've started off doing something and then you've decided, you know what, I don't like this ain't for me, pull it up, pull the ting up, stop. Boundaries, 100%, they have to be set and also understood. So yeah, if you're planning to have rough sex and it's more than just a hard shag than usual, have a conversation about it first and be clear, be totally clear, crystal clear on what we're doing here. Be sure you get whatever you need to get across. I think a good way of easing in and relaxing is communication again. Like, I am such an advocate for communication when it comes to sex. I'm someone that likes to talk anyway. So communication is big for me. And I think it should be big for anyone that's engaging in sex, especially if you're trying new things. Like, we need to know what's happening here. We need to be talking about this. Like, we need to know how we're moving. Sometimes it's a case of a little bit of dirty talk might be necessary. Tell him or tell her what it is you want, how you want it. And foreplay. Yeah, foreplay. Good foreplay is an amazing way of loosening up. So making it rough is much more than just being pummeled harder with a finger, a dick, a dildo, whatever it is. Rough sex is more than just being flung about like a wash rag. Rough sex can be biting lips, scratching backs, biting necks, thighs, nipples, a bit of manhandling the bits, you know, basically just not being gentle. It's grabbing and groping. It's usually fast and passionate. But then again, on the flip, rough sex can be administered slowly as well. If you can't be open enough to express when something's not feeling right with the person that you're having sex with, there's a good chance you shouldn't be having sex with that person. Full stop. It's probably a good time to talk about safe words. Safe words are literally just words that have been decided on, agreed on before engaging in rough sex or kinky play. The safe word basically acts as an indicator. In a lot of instances, it's just a word that might be used to say stop. If you've agreed, okay, if I say gold, that means stop. If you've agreed that beforehand, then when the person hears the word gold, they know automatically you stop what you're doing. Those that are new to BDSM may well use a system that is quite common. It's the traffic light system. Basically, is what it says on the packet. Essentially, if you say green, that means, yeah, I'm good, carry on. Amber, that means I'm getting close to my limit, so just be mindful. And red, obviously, is stop. That's an option. I have to say, rough sex undoubtedly carries some extra risks. Penile fractures and vaginal bruising can occur if it's a bit rougher. You know, if you're getting pummeled by a penis in your vagina, then the penis could potentially, bend a bit. Equally, whenever you pound anything, bruising can occur. You might end up with a bruised vag. So even though you're consenting, just obviously be careful. You don't want to cause any long-term pain, let's just say. To minimize the risk of anything like that, I always say lube. Make sure you're lubed up, like fully lubed up. Ladies, even if you're someone that kind of gets wet, I'd say add lube because it adds a different level of wetness. It's not like body fluids. It's a little bit thicker, therefore more lubricating, hence the term lube. So that's always worth introducing into sex anyway, whether it's rough or not. I think aftercare is so important as well. Possibly or arguably the most important part of rough sex, along with consent and communication, of course. Because rough sex can feel amazingly wild and animalistic, it can lead to vulnerable moments afterwards. That's when it's important to kind of spend some time together. And again, you don't have to be in a full lovey-lovey relationship. Even if you're just having sex with that person, take some time to like cuddle afterwards, talk a little bit, not just bang, let's go. You can even take a nice hot bath or shower together, have a cuppa, rehydrate, that kind of thing. Just keep it nice, keep it friendly. And I suppose what you're trying to communicate is that I don't see you as a piece of meat. I see you as a very valid individual. Okay, we just did some rough shit, but you are still human. You are still a person. And therefore, I want you to know that I want to make sure you're okay. And if you kind of went really extreme, like, I don't know, you spanked each other and there's welts and maybe bruises and stuff, some people go there. The aftercare might look like moisturizing or tending to those wounds or bruises. And then once the smoke has settled, you can start all over again. The world is your oyster. There's no limit. There's no limit. So yeah, judge not, I say. Listen, if everyone was doing sex in the same way, it'd be so dry. There's nothing wrong with wanting to look at, explore, experiment, test, dip your toes in different things. As you progress through life in terms of your maturity as an adult and you learn different things and you understand different aspects of yourself, it might be something that you want to explore. So yeah, never ever rule things out completely, but always only do what is comfortable for you. Well, I think that's about enough from me. I'm going to go and dig out my handcuffs and me blindfold and hang from the chandeliers for a little bit, I think. What do you reckon? Until next time, take care.